put out like a slide in terms of what do we see as a platform company today in the market, in the education space, what are scenarios that we see play out, how data solutions are being used, how AI solutions are being used, right? And that's going to be interesting because we also can learn from you. We'd love to hear in terms of your thoughts and as well as everyone else who's present here. That's the way we're going to go about this. Hope that's fine, right? So this is something we've done quickly through. In Microsoft today, and this is true for the industry aspect, innovations are not limited to one platform, right? It's about being able to kind of innovate, improvise, and leverage digital technology assets across whatever space it is, right? It can be a mobile phone like we do apps today. It can be in a corporate environment where you run large technology projects. And the way that we support not just Microsoft, every other large cloud provider, is about supporting or meeting the customers and users where they are. So that's the whole scenario of be it on-premise, be it in a hybrid setup, be it cloud, be it on the edge. How do we kind of support our customers and partners and users make their scenarios around data and AI real? And when we think about data and AI, one thing that we always want to be super focused on is how do we use data and AI not for the sake of using it in terms of every AI company might not be an AI company, right? But can we translate that and relate that into real life experiences, right? Now, when I say experiences, if you are a direct to consumer brand or a business to consumer brand out here, how do your end users actually get a differentiated and a much better experience due to what you use around AI or data for that matter, right? Or if you're a B2B company, right, in learning solutions or in any other domain out here, how do you improve scenarios of leveraging data which ends up into better experience and better customer retention and hopefully acquisition as well? And how do we also reduce the cost of acquisition coming in? Those are scenarios that you will see kind of playing out here. That's where we're coming about experience. But at the same time, while we talk about the external scenarios, it is super important to ensure that the internal experience of employees are also relevant. So we talk about Microsoft saying that, hey, differentiating product is one part of your business pillar. Enabling your employees and resources internally is another part of your pillar. Because if your employees or teams are not the best in terms of productivity using technology, you will never end up producing those experiences, towards the end, right? So that's something we're going to talk about. At the same time, when we talk about operations and processes, right? All of us, and you guys know this better than anyone else, right? We're always in a hustle to figure out, okay, let's get the first task done, let's move on to the next out here. What we end up losing focus on is, are we losing an option to automate some of these things? Can we leverage technology and data to kind of make it fast and agile and not kind of put, resources and people and mind share in terms of things? Can I get my actual product building and the GTM faster? Those are things that we'll talk about. I put this slide up over here in terms of this is something that we're hearing through and through from the industry right now, right? Every organization is thinking about, or they're trying to be an intelligence-driven organization. And in simple terms, what we've been told is any company or organization that is leveraging data or artificial intelligence, right, to be able to foster as well as accelerate, in terms of your growth, in terms of your go-to-market speed, ability in terms of bringing out new features and capabilities, and at the end of the day, also doing it at the right cost. Now, it is super important to ensure all these jazzy, fancy technology we use today comes at the right cost at the right time for you to be able to get actual value out of it, right? And that's something that we see the industry geared towards, and as technology providers get super conscious about staying true to that value. Otherwise, we lose our relevance, right? So that's something we're seeing as a trend as we move forward. And I'm quickly running through some of these things because this is not rocket science, and I'm sure a lot of us know this. We also speak about what are the specific data-driven organization philosophies and I would say key parameters in terms of decision, right? Decision making. We always talk about data using insights or data to kind of drive business insights, right? What do you mean by insights at the end of the day? How do you use data? Can I ensure that when I'm providing a learning experience to a certain set of users, I am eliminating certain biases, I am eliminating certain inbuilt, I would say, mindsets that come through a founder or a technology leader thing? Can we ensure data kind of plays a role in creating that? That's real data-informed decision making, right? Digital mindset. I mean, we've heard about digital transformation, digitizing, that everyone speaks about it, right? can we also ensure that the challenge and what opportunity we have today right now, we don't solve for it from a today's perspective, we solve it from a future perspective, we solve it from a replicability perspective, and also ensure the assets is a digital nature so that the adoption is not going to be a challenge. How do I reduce dependencies? How do I reduce, individual points of errors? Is where we're talking about digital mindsets, right? Data analytics competencies, not going to talk about it. But one thing I want to call out is every company today, it doesn't matter which industry you're in, it doesn't matter what size of company you're in, which market you're catering to, everyone's trying to ensure that you have a technology practice and you have skills in-house to be able to build out those differentiations in your products, right? And for that to happen, you need to focus on having the right tools and frameworks, having the right support for open source frameworks out here, and ensuring that, hey, can I equip my data teams or technology teams with the right platforms for them to be able to be productive faster, right? And that's another tenet of a data-driven organization. Customer centricity, you want to talk about it, everyone knows it, super important in terms of being focused on not just today's customer, but tomorrow's customer as well. That's the hallmark of a lasting organization. Sure. And the last thing that I want to talk about is over here, collaboration, right? Now, this is nothing to do with data as such, but essentially, what do we build in terms of data assets and tools and frameworks? Can that be kind of used and replicated across the org as well as across your products, right? You don't want to be building. It's too big, it doesn't look my Yeah, sorry about that. Yes, so just to the last point, collaboration, right? So, what are you building as a data assets? In large companies back in the day, you would have silos in terms of someone building up something for a particular use case. The rest of the company doesn't understand that, right? I mean, the whole scenario of APIs came into the picture because, hey, how do you use and replicate? And that's something that has to be a cornerstone for any enterprise or any startup that's thinking about growing and scaling, because you don't want to be wasting time and rebuilding the wheel every single time, right? So these are some of the traits in terms of decision making, in terms of the characteristics of a company that want to rely on data, and that's something that I thought it'd be interesting to go through. Some numbers in terms of sorry about that. I think technology always ends up getting a spoil spot. Yeah. These are all numbers from, I think, it's not very visible out here, from the last Harvard versus report that comes in terms of how companies who are effectively using data in some form or shape actually see tangible business outcomes and results coming in, right? There is not, I want to include one more, I would say, number here. This came in one of our startup reports very recently. Any startup that actually has an AI component built into it, the propensity for them to raise money and hire is supposed to be like at least almost 54% or more, right? It's interesting, right? Now, you would have seen a bunch of startups saying, hey, AI powered, whatever. But the interesting bit right now is the market is also wising up, right? Now, see, back in the day when we were in college, right, the best technology was in enterprises. Today, what's happened is it's the other way around. The experience I have when I place an order on Amazon, I took that in enterprise technology, right? At the same time, the lack of the exposure to information and the source available is super relevant everywhere, right? So you can't be playing around just adding a .ai to it to your startup or idea to be able to raise it faster. Yes, it will work, but investors are wising up, the markets are wising up. So it's important for you to understand how do you get data in and get that, inculcate the data culture within your company, within the organization, within your offerings coming in. So just thought I will touch upon that. Okay, so just when you talk about what's the expectation, right? In a lot of companies, and this is interesting, I think this is what we feel within Microsoft. Before the pandemic happened, there was a lot of buzz around AI, cognitive services, and a bunch of these things, right? And one thing that we see in our internal research coming in is, it's not that customers move away from AI, it is still important, but there is a lot more cognizance in terms of real world AI scenarios, right? What actually works. Your science fiction jazz is all great, but what actually works. But one interesting trend that is coming, with technology proliferating, there's a bunch of options out here, tools out here, right? Everyone's kind of building out data teams and data offerings. And this is slightly large enterprise focused, and I'm calling it as a disclaimer. What's happening is, we finally come down to this whole point of, hey, there are multiple data sources, there are multiple versions of truth, right? How do we kind of ensure that the entire org comes around to one single version of truth? And that's something we're seeing as a trend right now. And this is, like I said, enterprise companies, BI, dashboarding, reporting, but the consequences are very interesting because these data insights, reports, and dashboards come out, ends up deciding, decisions of the company in terms of market expansion, new product launch, and a bunch of these things coming together, right? So we think while a lot of the focus on AI and advanced technology is still there, a lot of globally large customers of Microsoft have taken a step back and they're talking about, yes, I have the tools, I have the people, I have a bunch of things in place. How do I kind of start moving towards a single version of truth and then enable my consumers? Consumers could be leaders, consumers could be developers, consumers could be data scientists, right? So we're seeing this as a trend, and it's something for you guys to think about when you build out your offerings and your stuff. How do you kind of get your customer base, get your end consumer scenarios, and kind of try to tweak your offerings out there, right? Essentially, single version of truth. How do I ensure there's one version we want to trust and kind of come together on? That brings us to the 4 V's of data, right? Typically talk about data, there are 4 V's we typically talk about. There is velocity, there is volume, and there is also variety, right? Now, you would have heard data lakes, you would have heard data warehouses, you would have heard all these big data architectures out here. We're solving for it, right? The tools are improving, the performance is improving. There was Hadoop back in the day. A lot of people are moving from Hadoop to something called Spark, in-memory processing, much faster results, right? All that is happening right now. But what is becoming more important is veracity. Now, there is no limit to how much data you can capture, right? There's tons of data. Your app ensures you, as a startup who's building for your customers, you want to ensure you get as much data as possible from your customers, right? You do all of that. So volume is taken care of. Your tools will take care of variety and velocity and all of that. The challenge right now is veracity. So veracity has 2 aspects to it. There's an internal aspect and there's an external aspect. The internal aspect is, with all the data I have right now, what do I do with it? But can I trust my data? Right? That's the core point of it, right? You might be collecting data from multiple sources. Can I trust my data? Right? There are questions about, hey, can I or am I making the data that I've collected right now accessible to all the different resources within my company, within my product team, within my analytics team, but with the right guardrails, right? You shouldn't be getting your customer data open to everyone out there. So those are things that are coming as trends right now. And the most important thing is the external aspect. Data privacy laws, data residency laws are all getting stricter. Right? Europe started the whole initiative about GDPR. America's started with their own privacy law right now. India is coming out of their data protection law. I think that we've been talking about it. There's a new version that's just being announced right now. So it's getting a lot more stricter. Now, especially in the startup space, with all due respect to a lot of the startups that come before, right? There's been, I wouldn't say it's been second priority, but it's been the first priority to ensure, hey, the data that I'm using right now, be my customers, be my partners, I'm actually protecting it and ensuring the access to it is in the proper way, right? Now, with the regulations changing, with the expectations of the government and the large industries changing in terms of how the data is kind of looked after, this bit is going to be super important. Compliance, ensuring veracity of the data, ensuring I don't, there are no breaches of data in terms of access, that's going to be super important. And that's something, while you build your offerings, when you start creating your product features, it shouldn't be an afterthought of security and capability of data. That should be a primary concern. And that's going to, the whole regulations will drive a step change in behavior as well. So we'll see all of those things about Swiggy data breach or whatever happening should hopefully be a thing in the past moving forward. And hopefully as founders, you'll be inculcating that whole experience moving forward. Now I'm going to slowly move into the Microsoft plan of what is data and how do we look at it. But before getting there, we think about data from a very abstract concept of 3 pillars, right? We talk about databases, we store data, different types of databases, there's relational databases, SQL Server, Oracle, MySQL, PostgreSQL. You have a lot of NoSQL databases, right? I don't want structured data. I want documents to be run. My product catalog should run on a NoSQL environment. There's MongoDB there, there's Cassandra, there's Cosmos DB from Azure, a bunch of these options coming in, right? So essentially, the way we think about it is your operational databases will be a source or the foundation of the data that you do in your application or your data analysis projects. The second layer is about analytics. It's a very broad, wide-ranging, thing of analytics. You do a ton of things around it, right? The idea is, back in the day, when you talk about data, you go to an Oracle, you'll say Oracle data warehousing, and that's it, right? That's like one-stop solution. Right? You go to Microsoft, it's say SQL Server, right? That's the one-stop solution, right? Things change, right? There's so much more options out there, and a lot of them, the most adopted ones are open source. Now, as founders, as technology owners, you're going to be thinking about, hey, what are those key decisions that I have to take in terms of a data stack? And this whole thing is about, as founders in technology, open technology owners, you should think about my data strategy broadly, 3 pillars. What are the decision points I would need to make in each area out here? And then think about what components should I bring in. For example, a lot of the large CTOs today in the startup world in India are very clear that, hey, I want to leverage technologies that don't lock me into a particular platform. It's a very open thing, right? Coming to Microsoft 8 years back, this would have been a very different conversation, but we are understanding it, we actually appreciate it. So what that means is, platforms like us, who always wanted customers to be part of our proprietary technology, we've kind of moved completely away from that. We want to provide support to commonly used, widely popular open source frameworks out here, which ensures that anyone who's building something on MySQL today on Azure is not locked into Azure. Tomorrow, if you want to build something else on AWS or GCP, right? So that's going to be there. And this is driving behavior changes in terms of large tech companies, and it's a fact, right? I'm being very open and transparent about it. So which also helps folks like you to make those decisions in terms of, then the question is not about, hey, should I go to this cloud and I'll be locked in? No, the question is going to be, if I go to this cloud, what does the support that particular platform, forget cloud, platform provides in terms of flexibility and choice, right? That will drive a decision rather than anything else, right? So moving on to the governance. So we believe, and I think it's because of our slightly enterprise background as a company, we've been kind of forced, we've always kind of put our customers, I would say, governance requirements, security requirements as a first priority. Now, we think that's something that I think a lot of our startups and digital native customers are actually kind of adopting right now. So, and as I really think about it, I'm going to repeat my earlier point. Your security, governance, access should never be a secondary concern. It should be a primary point of view in terms of building your products, right? Now, so just moving on to the next slide. 3 large pillars, essential building blocks, different options, stay to open source wherever you can. If you think there's proprietary services that meet the requirement, think about the long-term perspectives. That's how we think about your data strategy, right? And then, I have not called out AI or ML, right? Now, I'm intentionally not doing it because not every company or every offering or every product needs to be AI ready from day one onwards, right? You will obviously kind of iterate in your product, you will find your product market fit, and then you kind of figure out how do you differentiate with the competitors, right? Maybe that's where AI comes in. And that's where, how you should think about platforms coming. So this is essentially how we think about a data or a data platform in Microsoft, and this is my plug about Microsoft, in terms of what do we provide, and we cover the entire spectrum of what you can do in data. We've announced something called the Intelligent Data Platform. This is as recent as early this year. While every platform provides all these things to a large extent, one thing that we're doing and we focus on Microsoft Go is, can we make it far more easier and far more, I would say, painless to kind of start building these things, right? For example, you would build your data stores. You collect your transaction history, you collect your user history in the database, right? Now you want to kind of run analytics around, who's my highest burning customer, right? If it's a B2B scenario, right? Who's my customer who's not renewing for that matter? So you will run analytics. What do? You kind of move the data from your databases to an analytics store. Now, this is, in simple terms, ETL, right? Now, when you have to do ETL, there are tools for this. There is an additional integration you need to build out. There is a dependency on the team that's going to be building out, right? It adds to your cost, adds to your overhead, adds to your speed. What we're striving to get to, can we make those integrations seamless? Can we make it intuitive? Can I ensure, hey, if I have a data on a SQL Server base or a Postgres SQL database, if I have to move it to an analytics layer, Can that be done by the platform? One click. So that's something that we're going to involving as the whole intelligent data platform. And the same data that comes in, can I also ensure it is taken care of? Both security principles are baked in rather than me having to bolt on solution. That's been some of our key aspects of it, right? And why do we want to do this? Because it increases two things. It increases productivity of our users to be able to do things faster rather than focus on plumbing and overheads. And the second thing is about how do we also enable data users, be it data scientists, be it data analysts, be it a CXO, it is a COO, to make decisions faster based on tools available out here, right? And that's how we think about data platform here. Again, it's just basically what we do, a bunch of offerings out here, we have a lot of these things. I'm just going to skip through this, right? This is interesting. So when you talk about components, essentially, what is the data platform? What is my data analytics stack, right? There are three large blocks we think about. Now the first step is essentially, and I'm just going to stay here. The first step is about how do I ingest data, right? It could be from a database, it could be from your Google Analytics, all your website analytics, it could be from your mix panel. I'm sure you would have used Clever Tap or whatever, right? You have data coming in terms of your browser history, or sorry, your website or mobile app details coming in. But you also have log information of your users. You also have their spending patterns or consumer behaviors out here. How do you marry it, right? So the first step is about have the right platform, the right tools in terms of ingesting data, right? And then where do you store it? The concept is about data lake, data warehouse. There's a new concept of lake house. Essentially marries a data warehouse plus a data lake. That's the in thing these days. A lot of large customers are moving towards that. Essentially, a lakehouse supports structured plus unstructured data, and you don't really have to move data into a different analytical tool. All your analytics querying engines or data science engines runs directly on storage. Does two things: reduces your cost, right? You're not moving data multiple ways. The third thing is it is supported by open source frameworks that supports a bunch of tools, so you're not limited by choice of tools, right? That's how the lakehouse structure is coming out. Then you talk about threading, training in terms of the transformations. You want to move data from a different format to a different dimension, fact dimension table. You want to change the format types. Enough and more tools. I'm not going to go too technical out here. How do you also then model and serve? This is interesting, model and serve, right? Consumers, to me, could be of three broad types. There is a non-technical consumer of data who looks at dashboards and reports. You take decisions based on that. There is a technical user of data in terms of analysis, your analyst community. Then you also have a set of relatively native data science. Now, all of these guys, they do different things with data, different types of data. Now, back in the day, before a lakehouse or a data lake came into picture, there were disparate systems doing this and taking place. Now, the whole concept of consolidating things ensures that you do everything in one go and helps you to build it out, right? And how do you consume it? That's where your derived insights comes in. And why do we say self-service? We want to ensure that our consumers are not hampered by knowledge of technology or a particular stack, not hampered by bandwidth of my IT teams, not hampered by someone like who's a data analyst. If somebody in the NIIT leadership team today, if they want to quickly get a sense of what my state of business is, right, it should be as intuitive as opening a mobile app, pulling out the latest Power BI dashboard and seeing what things are, right? You should be able to drill down and stuff like that. So that whole self-service mentality or capability is something that we are trying to build as a platform. And this essentially remains true irrespective of what cloud they're in, what hybrid environment, what on-premise environment, and right? And the types of users, this is interesting for you guys to figure out, hey, who should I hire first? What data role should I hire first, right? We talk about three large roles. There is the data engineering community, who does the plumbing and the infrastructure part of it, data scientist / analyst coming in, and then we spoke about the business users. But now the interesting part is, you'll have to think about who does this. Governance, security, visibility. So a lot of companies, a lot of folks are thinking about, getting a particular person or a team in charge of not just doing the underlying bit, but also kind of figuring out how do we bring the entire thing of capital data together in terms of security access, right? So that's something that we think is important. I have one slide here which I think maybe we can skip. It's essentially what Microsoft products are, which essentially caters to the entire thing. I don't think we should be talking about it right now. I can skip on it, but just because of Microsoft, we cover the entire spectrum. I want to land it there as well. What I'll do is, I'm just moving to the next slide. I want to kind of, sorry. Yeah, this is a very complex running slide. Alright, I know we have about 15 minutes left. This is something I want to talk about a bit, right? I think I want this to be a slightly, interactive session. I want questions to come in. I can share scenarios of what we're doing. When we think about what we see in the market of education providers, EdTech startups, right? There's enough and more. There's an entire bunch catering to K-12. There's a lot of them catering to skilling, higher education, preparation stuff. You guys are in the same areas too, right? When I break down some of these trends, use cases, and use of data, broadly we break it down to 3 areas. Customer experience, right? When I say customer experience, it's very closely related to your product experience as well, right? Now this is interesting. The first thing I put is AI-led features and product, right? Now, I'll give an example for us. So when Byju's, this is about 3 years back. So apart from the flagship Byju's learning program, they've had a program for English learning now. They did a very muted launch for a year and a half back. Now the whole idea was how do I get my students who are on the Byju's app today to actually move from increase my market share of not just maths and science, also to language. And they were kind of targeted to tier 2, tier 3 town schools out there. And the whole idea was, can I create a strong enough English learning app that can be a complement to what your schools teach you right now? And the first and foremost thing was the entire interface is not text, it's not touch, it's speech, right? Now, how do you measure, how do you make someone talk to an app? It's through speech, right? Now, if you have to do speech, then there are multiple AI technologies that gets involved, right? Right from saying, hey, hello, app, or whatever. The app has components around reading comprehension, there's pronunciation assessment, among these things, right? Now, these are hard problems to solve in terms of AI, right? Converting speech to text, checking the pronunciation assessment as a specific language codes, right? So that's an area wherein Microsoft worked with Byju's directly. We kind of help them build out the entire pronunciation assessment capability. So we were doing this with 2 customers worldwide, one is in China, the other one is in Byju's. So we kind of work with the customer and the product team. This is interesting more with the product team rather than the technology team because the models are trained and then exposed to the customers, right? But what we did was we kind of ensured we took feedback from actual product teams because they were closer to the customer base. They knew more about the Indian kids out here and the Chinese kids out there. We ended up kind of improving their experience and put out this whole capability out here. We see a lot of experience in terms of, hey, if I want to reach out to a different geography, right? Can I move my app from an English-based text to a different language out here? There are models available that can do translations. A similar scenario what we're doing, I'm not naming the customer is, can I improve my recommendation engines? Everyone has a recommendation engine, especially if you're providing a catalog of services, a bunch of, let's just say, courses to pick from, right? Now, it's slightly interesting but different from how a recommendation engine would work in an e-commerce app versus a video recommendation app in education, right? Because over here, it has to be guided. And when I'm saying guided, because you always have to stick to a learning path. Now, how do I ensure my consumer behavior prior on the app? How do I factor that in? How do I ensure I stick to the learning path that is prescribed by the right and the curriculums, and then recommend or pop up the right educational capsule? It could be a video, it could be an exercise, and ensure my experience of the student is progressively getting better and creating value. That's something we're working towards right now. And how do we do this? You need to have a ton of data in terms of, when I say ton, obviously data goes up. How do we leverage the right algorithms? How do we look at the right kind of mechanism with collaborators or whatever to improve the experience on and on, right? And why should you do this? Because if you don't do this, there is enough and more options out there in the market. Now, how do you differentiate yourself? Is by creating those subtle technology data use cases that improves the experience of progress. If I am a student, I have a companion app of skilling on a particular, I want to learn Python, for example, right? After a week, after doing 3 sessions, if I don't feel like either my competency is moving up or my comfort level is moving up, and if the app is not giving the right nudges or the right recommendations, you lose me as a student, right? So that's something that a lot of EdTech companies are thinking about right now and improving very heavily. Similarly, the last statement, right? I think we hear this as clear, problem statements. How do I effectively measure comprehension? Especially if it is technical subjects, you do tests, you do a bunch of things, right? But conceptual subjects, right? In terms of learning, how do I measure comprehension? That's something people are thinking about. Can I have a two-way interaction with a tutor / an examiner? By kind of also not just looking at a text interface, but kind of actually making the person speak, getting the underlying speech model to convert into text, looking at the right, because you can't do it for every person, right? Can you pick up the right keywords? If those right keywords are being used in the conversation, then there is comprehension of stuff. So people are trying a lot of models out here, right? Doubt clearing. A lot of students are not, a lot of them just don't naturally or intuitively ask questions. You are fed content, you consume content, the amount of interactivity might not be very high in a lot of scenarios. I'm sure you must be facing this, or maybe I'm wrong. How do we ensure, how do we improve the doubt clearing, I would say experience is something that, people are trying out. There are scenarios where they are popping up a recommended doubt, rather than the student having to ask themselves, can I pop or propose or recommend a doubt that potentially could be there, and get the student to kind of check on it or click on it to then, put it out the mentor or the teacher, right? Scenarios that we are trying to see. I'm not saying this is solved for, nobody's solved this right now, but everybody's trying to improve on the experience and trying, how do I leverage the data that I have right now and kind of build it out. Similarly, revision practice. In early grade scenarios, we have some tools in Microsoft called reading comprehension, which kind of is a read-along feature and stuff like that, which is a lot more intuitive in our research for a young student when they're using an app and reading and stuff, right? That's something that we're doing with not just startups, but a lot of schools globally right now. We do this in English and a few other languages. There are plans to kind of integrate with more Indian languages. That's something that we're working at part of our Hyderabad data center as we speak. Moving on to operation. These are more generic use cases. Right? These are not specific to only EdTech. But then, how do I do the right scheduling? I have a limited number of tutors and teachers on the platform. I have a much larger pool of students to cater. How do I leverage analytics to do this, right? How do I create the right matching between capabilities, skill sets is something that we see as a real example right now. The third one is interesting. So, customer service center is a big engine of what you do in EdTech providers, right? Feedback from customers coming in. How do I leverage that feedback? How do I escalate it faster? How do I also remove the number of people I have in my call center? Can I automate a bunch of that by technology, right? So that I improve my cost or rather optimize the cost. So these are growing pains of any company, especially in a B2C kind of a scenario. And we do a lot of work in terms of customer service center automation and analytics coming in there. The good thing is today, because a lot of our customers speak in Indian languages, there's English, there's Tamil, Telugu, there are language models available today that are being used by your peers and large startups in India, and that's something you should be thinking about. Again, differentiation, how do I kind of improve my customer experience? The last bit is fairly standard again, regular analytics about customer churn, lifetime value, how do I kind of create dashboards, how do I kind of create better investor reports in terms of my progress and stuff, can I use my data, present it better, are there better ways of actually disseminating information? So these are some of the things that we see as trends. I'm just going to take a pause now and leave it here and then see. Yes, sir.
I was wanting to ask this. See, you have provided a very good view of how you can use technology to do that, whatever you cover. I think there is an element which I find lacking very often. There's lots of data, but people don't know what to do with that data. And there is an expertise in each domain as to what can be some of the use cases where certain analysis of data in a certain form has led to something, and therefore more can be created.
But
Is there a body of knowledge available there, for example, in this EdTech space?
so EdTech is a slightly niche space in the startup ecosystem. If you talk about it, there are a few large players who have been doing it. But the fact of the matter is, at least from our experience of working and talking to some of you guys, it's slightly more early stage compared to maybe an e-commerce player or even let's say a delivery tech player out here in terms of using data. A lot of the focus is on customer acquisition, marketing, and then content. So content has been king. You talk about Byju's, you talk about an academy. That's been a big focus area. Now they're trying to focus and figure out, hey, how do I improve my recognition right now? And sir, to your question, today, if I want to create a marketplace, I'm just taking a slightly different example. There is a reference pattern in terms of, hey, what types of data do I need? What type of tools do I need to build real-time or a batch data analytics? And what are the outcomes in terms of, hey, do I measure my GMV? Do I measure the sum of the metric? That is a lot more.
And what are the inferences I draw and how I move on it?
Absolutely.
So where is that body of knowledge?
So,
see, really where I find is, now there are more tools available,
right,
more solutions available than problems.
right,
Because people don't know how to define problems.
correct.
How does one gain traction there? I'm speaking on behalf
Absolutely.
of
Absolutely. So,
maybe one of them have answers also. Or
No,
both.
still we
One
are
or
also
more
figuring
have
out.
answers.
We are also figuring out.
Okay.
so sir, I completely agree that the body of knowledge in terms of what data can you use to get what is still emerging. And I think that's what I hear from my industry counterparts. Interestingly, China has led the way, right? Now, that's a different story altogether with the whole gun regulation happening. One thing that we see is learning before the whole ban that happened in the online tutoring space that happened in China. There was a trend that we're trying to figure out, hey, I have a consumer spending so much time, and this is especially true for not the K-12, but the higher education streaming platforms, spending so much time on my platform to kind of learn, figure it out. Can I also start pushing an e-commerce / additional cross-sell products out here? And it was interesting in China because a lot of the platforms were already invested in by either Alibaba or a Tencent, which is not the case in India. So in India today, the EdTech space, and correct me if I'm wrong, it's a lot more independent in terms of what they do today. There is no tie-ups between e-commerce, marketing scenarios, which was way more evident in China. So another scenario that we see, sir, is about differentiated experience. Right? You all know Duolingo, right? So language learning and stuff. So Duolingo came to us about 2 years back to Microsoft, not the India team, the global team, and they said, listen, while we have our modules of learning and teaching going on, we want to try and see if we can create a artificially built but natural voice to guide learning, right? Which will suit our learners out here. So what they ended up doing was, this is an interesting case of AI that is actually live today. They worked with Microsoft to create a language, or not a language, a voice, right? A natural voice. We call neural voice technology. They created an artificial voice that will kind of guide a student for the Spanish language starts with. That is not an English sounding Spanish person, but it's a Spanish sounding Spanish person to kind of guide the whole thing. What they do then, they're all already doing it. But the challenge was they were limited by the audio recorders, these audio artists coming in. Once you get one person, you have to do a bunch of sessions at one go. And then the next set of sessions, if that person is not available, the experience is broken. So they're trying to solve for it, right? So just talking about experience scenarios, what we see. So speech, voice are interesting areas coming in. But to be very honest, the focus right now, and tell me if I'm wrong, is about customer acquisition. It's about customer retention. And also, how do I ensure my content? One interesting case that we see is, I have done content. How do I make my content more interactive? So there are discussions going on about, hey, can I look at an AR kind of scenario? But I think we are still some way away from the mainstream use cases, is what our understanding is. I think there's a ton of research going on, there's a ton of discussions going on. We've not cracked it from a large-scale mainstream deployment from an AR, VR perspective.
Also, very much like the last point. In Azure, you have number of technology stacks and a number of use cases of small solutions that you build. Is there a place where different types of data, how that is used to project different things and get predictive or whatever other inference outcomes. Are there places?
Yes, so there are, so for example, there is a set of, in which we share offline apps, the set of education focused, services today. We have something called video indexer. It's essentially video indexer. What it does is, for example, we have an EdTech based out of, I think, Canada or Australia. What they do is, they want to measure, they have a bunch of recordings of classes, right? They're an online tutoring class, right? These recordings are available. Now, how do I measure effectiveness of it? How do I measure, so what the service does is, you stream any video as part of it. It identifies the speaker with the teacher and the students in the room. It'll look at emotion, it'll look at liveliness. Hey, is someone just there for the sake of it? Is someone actually participating? So these are insights that we are providing, which potentially can be used by the startup to improve on their customer experience scenarios. So there are scenarios and uses like this, for example, reading comprehension that we spoke about, which are being used in schools right now. But it's a bit of a I would say work in progress in terms of, hey, this is what you do, X, Y, Z, you get the EdTech secret sauce, right? We're not there yet, right now. Sorry, I think you're almost there. Any questions? Silent bunch. Have you seen any patterns, trends? What do you think you're struggling with?
My question is, see, for example, we are in EdTech and we have a huge database of the students and teachers, right? And we are now looking at giving them personalized guidance, right? So AI-driven personalized guidance, like, hey guys, these are the people you can connect with. These are the e-books that you can subscribe to. These are the skill courses you can do, and these are the job opportunities. So we are giving them the recommendation. Now the challenge is what we have is, some of the data are in MySQL, some of the data are in MongoDB. Right? So is there any easy way, is there any algorithm or service available, recommendation service, ready-made service, which can be implemented and taken?
Thank you so much for asking that. So one of the services that we launched is we call it personalized. Now, the recommendation engines can be complex or simple based on the use case, right? And what we've done is, we share a link out here, there is a ready-made template for personalizing recommendations where you can decide what the inputs are and the service throws out results for you, right? So we have customers in different industries using it right now. Typically what we see is, when you start off a small team, you don't want to be kind of building on complex algorithms, you want to start getting results, right? So you start the personalizer engine today, and then you can customize it based on how you move forward in the results. Now, the reason I put this slide up here, right? You said, hey, I have stuff in my databases, bunch of these things. Right? I want to bring it to somewhere. What will you bring it to? You will bring it to your database already here. You will bring it to somewhere here in terms of the data lake. Right? Forget this and this blocks out here. There are enough and more tools to bring data from disparate sources into a single version, which can then be used by a bunch of services here for you to be able to query and get data. Now, when you do recommendation engines, the models are deployed in either of these platforms, which can be automated and can be thrown. Now, for a team that is new and small, you might find it tough to get the right skills, the right people to kind of build it up first, right? That's where using some of those built-in services will be faster. So at least you get to try to solve a problem first, see the results, and then you can kind of course correct out. So what I can do is maybe through Nishit, I can set out like a bunch of resources that we have today and different scenarios, use cases, and what have other customers used as a reference material for you, and happy to kind of take up any further questions. Does it answer?
Yeah.
The answer is the tools are there, the models are there. Now, to go a step further, there is a built-in accelerator which you can start using fairly quickly as well.
Yeah, the question is regarding the Dynamic 365, and you mentioned about the Azure capabilities and the vision intelligence, computer vision, all those features. There's this vision intelligence, mixed reality capture system which is there in place, and leverages the Azure cloud.
Absolutely.
And those images which you can get recognized, and the annotations and the mixed reality experiences have it. But when you said that you're building the framework which is very democratic, that you can build on top of it and leverage that. But that thing, so far I look at it and design of it, it's very centric to just what you can do on the Azure platform, right? You can't really come in, build it, use it, skin it out, and just leverage it out.
So the way I would think about it as a technology decision maker, right? I would always think about build versus buy, right? Now, I would strongly discourage from building hard problems like vision and speech and text and stuff like that. And why do I say these are hard problems? The amount of data, the amount of patterns that you can get is just crazy humongous, right? And for you to be able to build custom models to figure out, extract information from images will be a long science process for yourself.
But then the product then becomes competing with your platform, doesn't it? How does it get
it doesn't necessarily mean the way we do it is some of our first party products will also inherit a vision capability, but that doesn't mean that for you to use that capability you have to use Dynamics. You can use the standalone service out there. And the good thing is, for example, I will always say your analytics stack is something you should own. Your AI stack is something that you should look at outside providers if it has already been done for. Now the benefit is of the vision parameters. Can you customize and tweak the pre-trained model further? If you have the capability, yes, go use it.
Exactly. There's the challenge of scale comes in. I talk to you offline regarding.
Absolutely happy to do that.
Exactly.
Today in Microsoft, there is a standard vision model that's available. What we also do is you have a custom vision option wherein you can bring your data and train the model to suit your requirements.
Talk about that.
Absolutely. And the good thing is the data is yours. So
That's what you want, really.
that data is yours. Nobody has access to data in Microsoft. And that data, your models improve over time with more data coming in, right? And that data remains, it doesn't go to the base model. It will stick to your tenant, your use case. So, happy to talk about it after this.
And just to this point, actually I've seen larger companies which are public listed in robotic process automation. There are companies which are maybe even competing with Microsoft, like there's a company called UiPath which is competing with Microsoft, but they are actually using Azure as a service and still they are comfortable with it because of course the data is still belonging to the client and not, and they are public listed. One of their major of their business, one product of Microsoft is still competing with them, but they are still fine with it.
But how easy it is? For example, as you know that the major market player in India now is AWS.
Correct.
So most of the startups they start with AWS.
Correct.
So moving everything from AWS to Microsoft is again a big question.
Good question, right? Good question, right?
Can we use certain services here? Like
Absolutely good question, right? I'll take maybe a minute to answer this, right? So, AWS created a market. The cloud market was not there before Amazon came and created the market, right? And they've been a clear market leader in India, specifically in the startup space. No two ways about it. 5 years before when I started talking startups in Microsoft, we were not given any chance to even talk about it. Things have changed. Today, Myntra runs everything in Azure. Today, Paisabazaar runs everything in Azure. Today, InMovie runs in Azure. There's enough more cases today, right? We've also kind of learned and improved the platform out here. To your question, see, I wouldn't say that move from one cloud platform to another cloud platform unless and until there is a significant cost benefit or there is a strategic alignment, either Microsoft helping you go to market together, if you're a SaaS provider, or you have a specific technology capability that is unique to Microsoft, right? Otherwise, a lot of it is commodity, right? You want VN storage network, it's available in every cloud tool. So always think about what you do. And to your specific question, you can always pick and choose what components to work on. So I have customers today, maybe I can give an example. A Policy Bazaar runs their marketplace on AWS. Sister company, Paisabazaar, their entire loan business runs on Azure today. I have customers who run their application stack on AWS, but their data platform analytics stack on Azure today. So this mix and match is definitely possible. But as as decision makers, as owners of their companies, you've got to think about cost, you've got to think about technical capability, and you've got to think about change management. If the change management is too much that you're losing out on building a product, then it's not the right call for you, right? So I will leave it to individual decision makers and being absolutely candid about the things that we see large customers think about. I'm assuming it's the same thing for you as well. The answer is yes, you can pick and choose. No challenge in terms of that, but migrating the entire thing, figure out your benefits, figure out your long-term strategy, figure out if it aligns with your next 6 month to 12 month plans.
So how?
Price-wise, is there any difference price-wise?
So good question, sir. So, like I said, the basic stuff, you want to put a virtual machine in Azure, AWS, GCP, it's pretty much same. I mean, I can't be more expensive, I can't be more cheaper. That's the way it is, right? And in Redmond, we joke about, you look across the pond and say what AWS is doing, we do the same thing. It happens, right? Commodities, no. Now that is where it gets interesting. So I spoke about the intelligent platform market. A lot of these lines that you see here, typically we've taken an approach in Microsoft Azure. Can we make it part of the platform? So that I don't have to put 3 more people to create the integrations and then maintain it. And which might not be true for other platforms, but everyone's kind of coming in there. And in terms of pricing, if you want to win a deal, we obviously get to win the deal, sir. I'll just put it out there. So, it is, I wouldn't say it's a completely commoditized market, but it's getting there. But interestingly, some of these AI models and stuff, you will see significant differences in pricing. And one benefit in Microsoft Azure today is the number of data centers that we have globally. They are available in 60 countries now, which is more than Google and AWS put together. So that has been kind of helpful for us. Every country is having their own data residency laws, privacy laws. So we're able to kind of, cater faster. So we have startups saying that, hey, I'm very administrative, but I want to start in Southeast Asia in 3 countries, in Indonesia, in Singapore, and Malaysia. Hey, you are the only guy who has data centers there. So we're seeing those benefits come into play right now. And mostly large customers are always thinking about multi-cloud, hybrid cloud. Nobody wants to put everything in one single bucket. So technology differentiations always becomes a key decision maker. I hope I answered your question. Thank you. All right, I think we're out of our time. Hopefully that was helpful. I'm up here for about another 20 minutes or so. Feel free to kind of jump in. I will share maybe the deck and maybe some additional resources from NIIT. And NIIT will kind of maybe share the lead. And I'll share my coordinates out here. If there's any questions, whatever, just feel free to reach out. My number is here. Happy to give the support. Thank you so much for the opportunity. I hope it's have a very, very interesting